Although we find ourselves solitary today, gazing out at a world where we remain the only human species, this was not always the case. 300,000 years ago, the Earth was younger, wilder, and far more diverse. If you could walk the continents back then, you would have encountered neighbors, at least 8 other kinds of people living their lives in parallel to ours. Some were taller, while others stood barely waist-high. Some possessed brains larger than our own, while others navigated their world with different kinds of intelligence. From the frozen tundras of the north to the tropical islands of the south, humanity was not a single note, but a chord. Imagine standing on a coastline stretching much farther than today, with sea levels 120 meters lower. In Europe, stocky Neanderthals crouch around fires in limestone caves built to endure the crushing cold of the Ice Age. In Africa, the small-statured Homo naledi moves through dark, narrow cave systems with a grace we can only imagine. On Java, Homo erectus, the oldest of us all, still walks the riverbanks after nearly 2 million years. On a tiny Indonesian island, Homo floresiensis hunts pygmy elephants. In the high mountains of Tibet, mysterious Denisovans adapt to thin air, leaving behind genetic echoes that still live on in people today. This was the world as it truly was, a tangled bush of human life, not a straight line. We were simply one of the branches, a newcomer in Africa, untested and unremarkable. We had no guarantee of survival. The Neanderthals had bigger brains, Homo erectus had endurance, the Hobbits had resilience, and yet here we are, alone. The question that haunts the silence is simple. What happened? How did a planet teeming with human diversity become the domain of just one? For a long time, we believed that to be human meant to be smart, with large cranial capacity defining our membership. But when we discovered small-brain toolmakers on Flores or the ritualistic behaviors of Homo naledi in South Africa, the old rules shattered. Being human is not defined by a single metric like brain size. It's a constellation of traits, anatomy, behavior, adaptability. It includes those who lived in freezing cold and those who thrived in the tropics, makers of fire and climbers of trees. Evolution doesn't march toward a goal. Often it preserves the luckiest, those who happen to be in the right place when climate shifts. We are here not because we were destined to be, but because our branch managed to hold on while others, one by one, snapped under the weight of time. The first human to leave Africa did so nearly 2 million years ago. Long before our species existed, this pioneer was Homo erectus, and their journey would prove one of the most successful dispersals in our genus's history. While other species rose and fell within single continents, erectus spread across 2, adapting to everything from tropical forests to temperate woodlands. They endured for 1.9 million years, a span dwarfing Homo sapiens' existence by a factor of 9. Erectus weathered ice ages and interglacials, volcanic eruptions and droughts, the rise and fall of countless other species. They were taller than predecessors, with longer legs and shorter arms, a body plan that finally severed the last ties to life in trees. Their legs carried them out of Africa into the unknown, reaching Georgia by 1.8 million years ago. From there, some moved east into China, eventually becoming Peking man, while others pushed south into Indonesia, island hopping across land bridges exposed during low sea levels. It was on Java that erectus made its final stand, surviving until approximately 117,000 years ago. This Javan population at Ngandong represents the youngest form of Homo erectus. For decades, their age remained uncertain, but rigorous 2019 dating settled the question. These fossils are between 117,000 and 108,000 years old, while erectus and sapiens existed simultaneously. They occupied different regions and likely never met. By the time sapiens reached Java around 73,000 years ago, erectus had been gone for at least 35,000 years. What killed them was climate change. Around 120,000 years ago, the open woodlands erectus had thrived in for hundreds of thousands of years gave way to dense tropical rainforest. Erectus, with its conservative tool technology and reliance on familiar prey, couldn't adapt quickly enough. Within tens of thousands of years, they were gone. What made erectus successful wasn't brilliance, but rugged competence. Their brains, averaging around 900 cubic centimeters, were larger than earlier hominins, but smaller than later humans. They made tools, primarily hand axes, that were effective but largely unchanged for over 1 million years. They controlled fire, with the earliest solid evidence from Israel, dated to around 790,000 years ago. Fire gave them ability to cook food, stay warm, and defend against predators. They hunted large game, worked cooperatively, and likely possessed some form of proto-language. Their skulls were thick-boned with heavy brow ridges and a long, low brain case. Their faces projected forward, and they had no chin, a feature not appearing until sapiens evolved. By the time erectus went extinct, the world had changed dramatically. Homo sapiens had begun expanding from Africa. Neanderthals were thriving in Europe. Denisovans were evolving in Asia's mountains, and Homo naledi was placing their dead in deep South African caves for reasons we may never understand. Homo erectus, the great survivor who has seen 2 million years of planetary history, left behind only bones and tools scattered across 2 continents. They were the first to walk out of Africa, the first to master fire, the first to prove humanity could thrive beyond the cradle. But they were not the ones who endured. If erectus was the great wanderer, then Homo heidelbergensis was the great ancestor, the last common thread connecting 3 successful lineages. This species emerged around 700,000 years ago, likely from late erectus populations, and by 500,000 years ago had spread across the old world. Heidelbergensis was not uniform, but a collection of regional variants sharing enough features to be grouped together. The first fossil was discovered in 1907 near Heidelberg, Germany, a massive jawbone that belonged to no living human. Over following decades, more fossils emerged: a skull from Broken Hill in Zambia, a partial skull from Petrolona in Greece, a remarkable collection from Cima de los Huesos in Spain. What united them was brain size around 1,200 cubic centimeters, larger than erectus, but not quite reaching Neanderthal levels. Their skulls retained heavy brow ridges, relics of erectus ancestry, but the back of the skull had begun rounding out. Heidelbergensis was the first to master the levallois technique, sophisticated stone tool production requiring forward planning. Unlike simple hand axes made by striking flakes off a core, levallois tools were made by carefully preparing the core first, so a single blow would detach a flake of predetermined shape. This demonstrated cognitive sophistication, suggesting Heidelbergensis was thinking several steps ahead. They were also skilled hunters, evidenced by wooden spears at Schöningen, Germany, dated to 400,000 years ago. These weren't simple sticks, but carefully crafted weapons balanced for throwing. The presence of horse bones with cut marks suggests they were hunting large game successfully. Fire was part of their toolkit, with evidence from sites across their range. The complexity of their tools, coordination required for group hunting, and evidence of long-distance trade networks all point to communication beyond simple gestures, perhaps a proto-language capable of conveying concrete information. Around 400,000 years ago, regional differences within heidelbergensis populations began deepening. In Europe, they evolved traits defining Neanderthals, shorter bodies adapted to cold, larger nasal cavities. By 400,000 years ago, some European fossils already looked more Neanderthal than heidelbergensis. In Africa, a different trajectory unfolded. Heidelbergensis populations there retained longer limbs and gracile builds suited to heat dissipation. By 300,000 years ago, the earliest anatomically modern humans appeared in Morocco and Ethiopia. Higher, rounder skulls, though still retaining archaic features. Meanwhile, in Asia, another branch quietly diverged. Evidence is mostly genetic, but some heidelbergensis populations moved eastward into Central Asia, where they evolved into Denisovans, a lineage remaining hidden until 2010. By 200,000 years ago, heidelbergensis as a distinct species had vanished through transformation. The lineage split into three: in Europe becoming Neanderthals, in Africa becoming Homo sapiens, in Asia becoming Denisovans. These three would dominate the planet for the next 150,000 years, sometimes overlapping, sometimes interbreeding, sometimes coexisting in parallel. Heidelbergensis was not a dead end, but a crossroads, the last moment when a single species spanned continents. After them, there would be no more pan-continental human species, only divergence and specialization. But 300,000 years ago, that outcome was far from certain. The stage was set, the players were in position. 300,000 years ago marked peak human diversity, more distinct forms of Homo than at any point in its 2-million-year history. This wasn't chaotic competition, but separation and specialization, each lineage occupying its own niche. In Europe, Neanderthals were well established, adapted to cold through shorter limbs, barrel chests, and noses designed to warm icy air. They lived in caves, hunted reindeer and bison with wooden spears, controlled fire expertly, and had brains among the largest ever evolved, averaging 1,500 cubic centimeters. In Africa, Homo sapiens was emerging from heidelbergensis ancestry. Early sapiens were anatomically modern in some respects, higher foreheads, rounder skulls, but retained archaic features. They were generalists in a world dominated by specialists. That flexibility would prove decisive. Far east, Denisovans thrived in isolation, having split from Neanderthals around 400,000 years ago. Almost nothing is known of their appearance, only fragments, a finger bone, teeth, a jaw piece from Tibet. But their DNA tells a story of extreme adaptation. Some evolved genes for processing oxygen efficiently at high altitudes, a trait surviving in modern Tibetans. On Java, Homo erectus entered its final phase, still hunting along the Solo River, unaware climate was shifting. The woodlands sustaining them were becoming rainforest. They couldn't adapt quickly enough. On Flores, Homo floresiensis had undergone island dwarfism, shrinking until they stood barely a meter tall with chimpanzee-sized brains. Despite tiny brains, they made sophisticated stone tools and hunted pygmy elephants. Intelligence wasn't strictly about brain size. On Luzon, Homo luzonensis was evolving in parallel, a few teeth, finger, and toe bones, establishing they existed but not enough to know how they lived. In southern Africa, Homo naledi was doing something baffling. This small-bodied, small-brained species was navigating dark passages to reach chambers far from cave entrances where they left bodies of their dead. Whether intentional burial or something else remains unknown, but it challenges assumptions about small-brained capabilities. Naledi had a cranial capacity of only 500 cubic centimeters, and there were ghost populations, ones known only through genetics. DNA from sub-Saharan Africans shows traces of interbreeding with archaic humans that diverged hundreds of thousands of years ago, but no fossils match these genetic signatures. This was the world 300,000 years ago. At least 9 species, all recognizably human, but different enough that they'd know immediately the other was distinct. Some had massive brains and sophisticated cultures. Some had tiny brains and survived on remote islands. They were all experimenting with what it meant to be human. And for a brief moment, all those experiments ran simultaneously. None knew the experiment was ending, that within 260,000 years, only one species would remain. They couldn't have known because evolution doesn't telegraph its intentions, and extinction doesn't announce itself until too late. When the first Neanderthal skeleton was pulled from Germany's Neander Valley in 1856, many concluded this was something ancient and primitive. The idea it might be closely related to Europeans, that it lived alongside modern humans and possibly interbred, seemed preposterous. Yet over the next century and a half, the picture shifted. Neanderthals weren't distant cousins separated by millions of years. They were siblings, diverging perhaps 400,000 years ago, and for tens of thousands of years had been more successful in Europe than sapiens would ever be. Neanderthals evolved from heidelbergensis populations living in Europe for hundreds of thousands of years, adapting to harsh glacial climates. Their bodies were stocky and powerful, shorter limbs, broader torsos minimizing surface area and conserving heat. Their nasal cavities were enormous, designed to warm frigid air. Every aspect spoke to life in the cold. Their brains were larger than ours, averaging 1,500 cubic centimeters versus 1,400. This fact alone should dispel notions of dim-witted brutes. The occipital lobe was proportionally larger, while the frontal lobe was somewhat smaller, suggesting their minds worked differently from ours. They were skillful toolmakers, producing implements in the Mousterian tradition using the Levallois technique. Some populations developed tools showing regional variation, distinct cultural traditions passed through generations. Fire was central to Neanderthal life. Evidence shows they built hearths with care, arranging stones to contain flames. They cooked food, making tough plants digestible. Most remarkable is evidence of symbolic thought. At Shanidar Cave in Iraq, a Neanderthal was buried deliberately, possibly with flowers. In Spain, cave paintings dated to 64,000 years ago, before sapiens arrived, have been attributed to Neanderthals. The paintings are simple, geometric shapes and hand stencils, but creating them demonstrates an impulse toward representation. In Croatia, they fashioned jewelry from eagle talons. In France, they carved patterns into bone. Whether Neanderthals possessed language has been debated. Their hyoid bone is shaped like ours, suggesting speech anatomy was present. They carried a FOXP2 gene version nearly identical to ours, associated with fine motor control required for speech. This implies they had biological capacity for language. They lived in Europe for over 300,000 years, weathering multiple glacial cycles. Their populations were never large, perhaps tens of thousands, spread from Spain to Siberia. They hunted mammoths, woolly rhinos, reindeer using ambush tactics requiring planning and coordination. Despite their adaptations and success, Neanderthals began declining around 50,000 years ago as Homo sapiens expanded into Europe. The two species overlapped for at least 10,000 years, and during that time they interbred. Genetic studies confirm all non-African humans today carry 1 to 4% Neanderthal DNA, evidence of encounters in the Middle East or Southern Europe. By 40,000 years ago, Neanderthal populations had dwindled to isolated refugees in southern Spain and the Balkans. By 39,000 years ago, even these were gone. The reasons remain debated. Climate change, competition with sapiens, disease all likely contributed. Their populations were small and fragmented, making them vulnerable. They didn't vanish because they were inferior. They vanished because the world changed and they couldn't change fast enough. What survives isn't just bones, but genes still present in billions today, affecting everything from immune function to skin color. Neanderthals aren't extinct like erectus. They were absorbed, their DNA diluted, but never entirely lost. In that sense, they're still here, a permanent part of what it means to be human. The Denisovans are the most enigmatic of all human species, not because they left no evidence, but because what they left is so fragmentary. Unlike Neanderthals, whose fossils number in thousands, Denisovans are known from bone fragments that could fit in your palm, a teenage girl's finger bone, a few molars, a jaw piece from Tibet. That's all the physical evidence. Yet from these fragments, scientists extracted something extraordinary, a complete genome revealing a lineage as distinct as Neanderthals, one that interbred with both Neanderthals and sapiens and left genetic traces from Siberia to the South Pacific. The first Denisovan fossil was discovered in 2008 in Denisova Cave in Siberia's Altai Mountains. Among bones was a tiny finger bone belonging to a juvenile female who died 30,000 to 50,000 years ago. When geneticists sequenced its DNA, they discovered it didn't match Neanderthals or sapiens. It was something else entirely. The genome revealed this girl belonged to a lineage that split from Neanderthals roughly 400,000 years ago. Denisovans were a sister species to Neanderthals, sharing a more recent common ancestor with them than either shared with modern humans. Yet, Denisovans had evolved independently for hundreds of thousands of years, becoming genetically distinct. The discovery raised questions. Where had they lived? What did they look like? The Siberian cave provided limited clues. Stone tools were generic, indistinguishable from those made by Neanderthals or early sapiens. The few bones were too fragmentary to reconstruct appearance, though unusually large molars suggested robust, possibly large-bodied individuals. The Tibetan jawbone found in 2019 at over 3,000 meters elevation was perhaps most revealing. Proteins confirmed it belonged to a Denisovan who lived at least 160,000 years ago, pushing the timeline of high-altitude occupation back over 100,000 years and suggesting this lineage had adapted to one of Earth's most inhospitable environments long before sapiens attempted it. Genetic evidence supports high-altitude adaptation. Modern Tibetans and Sherpas carry an EPAS1 gene variant, helping the body process oxygen efficiently at high elevations. This variant is rare in lowland populations, but common in Tibetans, and genetic analysis shows it didn't evolve independently. It was inherited from Denisovans through interbreeding tens of thousands of years ago. This pattern isn't unique to Tibet. Across Asia and the Pacific, the Denisovan signature appears in surprising places. Melanesian, Papua New Guinean, and Aboriginal Australian populations carry 4 to 6% Denisovan DNA, significantly higher than Neanderthal contributions in Europeans and Asians. This suggests that as sapiens migrated through Southeast Asia between 50,000 to 40,000 years ago, they encountered Denisovan populations and interbred. The geographic range implied by genetic traces is staggering. If Denisovans contributed DNA to populations in Siberia, Tibet, Melanesia, and Australia, they must have occupied a vast swath of Asia. Yet they've left almost no physical evidence, no complete skeletons, no clear archaeological sites, no distinctive tools. They're ghosts known almost entirely through DNA. By 40,000 years ago, Denisovans had disappeared as a distinct population. No fossils date to less than 40,000 years ago. But genetics suggest they may have persisted longer in some regions, lingering in isolated Asian pockets even as sapiens spread. What's certain is that Denisovans were real, widespread, and contributed significantly to modern human genetic makeup. Future excavations may uncover more complete fossils. Until then, they remain phantoms, a reminder that the human story is far richer than fossils alone reveal. Islands produce unexpected life forms. When populations become isolated on islands with limited resources and no large predators, evolution often pushes them toward smaller body sizes. Island dwarfism. Smaller bodies require less food, and on resource-scarce islands, individuals needing less are most likely to survive. This happened on Flores. In September 2003, archaeologists excavating Liangbua Cave uncovered a nearly complete skeleton in sediment tens of thousands of years old. The skeleton was small, far smaller than any adult human should be. Initial assumption, it belonged to a child. But examination revealed fully erupted worn teeth, fused skull sutures, and an adult female pelvis. She'd been fully grown at death, yet stood no taller than a meter. Her brain, measured from cranial cavity volume, was approximately 400 cubic centimeters, smaller than any known adult Homo. The discovery was so unexpected, many scientists refused to believe it represented a distinct species. Perhaps microcephaly, a developmental disorder, perhaps a rare genetic condition. But excavations eventually uncovered bones from at least 12 additional individuals, all similarly small, all adults, all dating from roughly 100,000 to 60,000 years ago. This was not a single anomaly. This was an entire population. The species was named Homo floresiensis and nicknamed the Hobbit. These were indeed small people living in a world of miniaturized creatures. Flores was home to pygmy elephants called stegodon, giant rats, enormous lizards, and flightless birds. The island had been isolated for millions of years, creating an evolutionary laboratory where normal rules were reshaped by island life pressures. Tools found alongside floresiensis skeletons were surprisingly sophisticated given brain size. Stone blades, scrapers, and points, all made using techniques requiring planning and skill. Charred bone and burnt sediment suggested fire control. Whether they hunted pygmy elephants or scavenged is unknown, but the tools were capable of processing meat. Floresiensis origins remain debated. The most accepted hypothesis, they descended from an erectus population that reached Flores around 700,000 years ago, became isolated, and gradually evolved smaller bodies and brains in response to limited resources. The alternative, Floresiensis descended from an even earlier hominin that left Africa before erectus. Whichever is correct, Floresiensis challenges assumptions about human evolution, that brain size and cognitive ability are tightly linked and that the trend has been toward larger brains. Floresiensis had a brain the size of a chimpanzee's, yet they made stone tools, used fire, hunted or scavenged large animals, and survived for hundreds of thousands of years. This suggests intelligence isn't strictly about brain size, but neural organization, efficiency of connections, and environmental demands. The question of when Floresiensis went extinct is complicated. The most recent fossils date to around 60,000 years ago, but stone tools attributed to them have been found in younger layers, some as recent as 50,000 years ago. This raises the possibility they survived until relatively recent times, perhaps overlapping with the first sapiens, to reach Flores between 50,000 to 40,000 years ago. If they did overlap, there's no evidence the two species interacted. What makes the story stranger is that their disappearance may not have been the end. On Flores today, local traditions speak of a small human-like creature called Abu Gogo, described as standing no taller than a child, covered in hair, speaking an unknown language. According to stories, they were wiped out by villagers several centuries ago. Could this be cultural memory of Floresiensis, an echo of encounters passed down through generations? There's no way to prove it, but the possibility lingers. Whether or not the stories have basis in fact, Floresiensis' existence is undeniable and its implications profound. Evolution isn't a one-way march toward bigger brains. It's adaptation to local conditions, and sometimes those conditions favor getting smaller. The Hobbits of Flores were a successful species that thrived for hundreds of thousands of years, longer than sapiens has yet existed, with brains no larger than an orange. The discovery of Floresiensis prompted archaeologists to look more carefully at other Southeast Asian islands. The Philippines seemed promising. In 2007, researchers excavating Calao Cave on Luzon found a single foot bone that appeared to belong to a small-bodied hominin, dated to at least 67,000 years ago. In 2019, they announced additional bones, teeth, finger bones, toe bones, and a femur fragment, all displaying features that didn't match any known species. The teeth were small and simple, similar to sapiens, but toe and finger bones were curved, suggesting climbing capability, a trait more associated with ancient hominins. The foot bones showed a mix of primitive and modern characteristics. After analysis, researchers concluded they were looking at a new species, Homo luzonensis. The discovery raised immediate questions, most pressing being how luzonensis got to Luzon. Unlike Flores, Luzon has never been connected to the mainland by a land bridge. Reaching it would have required crossing at least 50 kilometers of open ocean. For erectus or its descendants, this would have been extraordinary, implying seafaring capability most didn't think was possible for early humans. Possible explanations: luzonensis ancestors were accidentally swept to sea, or early humans in Southeast Asia were more capable of building watercraft than believed. The curved fingers and toes suggest luzonensis retained tree climbing ability, useful in Luzon's dense tropical forests. The small teeth and gracile build suggest they were small-bodied, though exactly how small is impossible to say without more complete material. The fossil record is frustratingly sparse, only 13 bones from Calao Cave, all dating to at least 67,000 years ago. There's no evidence of stone tools directly associated with fossils. Perhaps luzonensis used organic materials that haven't survived, or tools so simple they don't stand out. What happened to luzonensis is unknown. The youngest fossils are 67,000 years old, meaning they could have gone extinct before sapiens reached the Philippines, or survived longer and eventually been outcompeted when modern humans arrived. There's no genetic evidence of interbreeding. What luzonensis reveals is that island Southeast Asia was home to at least two distinct small-bodied human species, possibly more, each evolving in isolation and adapting in ways that produced strange, unexpected forms. This challenges the old model of human evolution as linear progression. Instead, it suggests human evolution was messy, branching, full of parallel experiments, some succeeding for hundreds of thousands of years before disappearing. In September 2013, two cavers exploring Rising Star Cave in South Africa squeezed through a narrow passage called Superman's Crawl and descended into a chamber no modern human had entered. What they found were bones, hundreds of them, possibly thousands, all belonging to an ancient hominin no one had seen before. Lee Berger assembled a team small and flexible enough to fit through the passage, and over the next weeks, they excavated more than 1,500 bones, representing at least 15 individuals, one of the largest collections of hominin fossils ever found in a single African location. The species was named Homo naledi, after the Sesotho word for star. The fossils presented a bewildering mix. The hands were remarkably human-like, with curved fingers suited for climbing, but also with thumb and wrist structure, allowing precision grip for tool-making. The feet were equally modern, with arches and toe proportions, indicating competent long-distance walking. But the shoulders and pelvis were more primitive, resembling Australopithecines, and the skull was small and low, with a brain measuring only about 500 cubic centimeters, roughly a third modern human brain size. Initial assumption based on primitive features: Naledi was ancient, perhaps 2 to 3 million years old, a contemporary of Homo habilis. If true, Naledi would represent an early experiment in genus Homo evolution, a lineage that eventually went extinct without contributing to later evolution. However, this interpretation was overturned in 2017 when bones were finally dated. The results were startling. Homo naledi lived between 335,000 and 236,000 years ago. In the Middle Pleistocene, contemporary with early sapiens, late heidelbergensis, and possibly the last erectus populations. The most perplexing aspect wasn't the fossils, but their context. The chamber where bones lay, the naledi chamber, is deep within the cave system, more than 30 meters below surface, accessible only through tight squeezes and vertical drops. There's no evidence the chamber was ever connected to surface by a wider passage. There are no bones from other species, no carnivores, herbivores, scavengers. Only naledi individuals of all ages, scattered in a way suggesting they were placed there deliberately. The most controversial interpretation: Naledi was disposing of its dead, intentionally carrying bodies into dark passages and leaving them in the chamber as burial or ritual behavior. If true, this would be extraordinary because burial is thought to require symbolic thinking and cultural complexity that shouldn't be possible for a species with Naledi's brain size. Modern humans bury their dead because we understand death as a concept, have beliefs about what happens after death, and care enough to go through the effort. The idea that a small-brained hominin could do the same challenges fundamental assumptions. Alternative explanations exist. Perhaps the chamber wasn't used for burial, but to keep bodies away from living areas, avoiding scavengers or preventing disease. Perhaps individuals who died weren't carried there, but wandered in while alive, became trapped, and died. But this raises the question of why so many individuals over an extended period would make the same fatal mistake. The chamber isn't easy to reach, and there's no obvious reason Naledi would have been exploring it, unless deliberately going there for specific purposes. In 2022, new evidence emerged. Researchers analyzing cave walls in the Naledi chamber reported finding what appeared to be deliberate markings, geometric patterns scratched into soft limestone, along with evidence of controlled fire. If confirmed and conclusively linked to naledi rather than later human activity, this would suggest naledi was not only burying its dead, but creating symbolic markings and using fire beyond simple warmth or cooking. The implications would be profound. A species with a brain half modern size engaging in behaviors traditionally considered markers of advanced cognition. Skeptics have raised valid concerns. The cave has been visited by modern humans in recent centuries, and some markings and fire evidence could result from later intrusions. Dating of markings isn't as secure as bone dating. Even the burial hypothesis is based on circumstantial evidence rather than direct proof. What isn't in dispute? Homo naledi existed, lived recently enough to overlap with other human species, and had a remarkably small brain for Middle Pleistocene genus Homo. Whether naledi was capable of symbolic thought, whether it buried its dead, whether it used fire and created art, these questions remain open and will likely be debated for years. What naledi proves is that human evolution during the Middle Pleistocene was far more complex and varied than anyone imagined, and that small-brained species weren't automatically consigned to margins, but could thrive, adapt, and perhaps even engage in behaviors we've assumed required large modern brains. The mystery of naledi is still unfolding. Around 40,000 years ago, something began to change. The world, which for hundreds of thousands of years had been home to multiple human species, started to empty out. Neanderthals began disappearing from traditional territories, populations contracting into smaller refugees in southern Spain, the Balkans, and the Caucasus. Denisovans left no fossils dated to less than 40,000 years ago. Homo floresiensis vanished from the fossil record around 50,000 years ago. By 30,000 years ago, only one human species remained, Homo sapiens, spread across every continent except Antarctica, the sole survivor of a genus that had once been remarkably diverse. The extinction of Neanderthals is best documented because they left a rich fossil record, and their last populations overlapped with sapiens geographically and temporally. Final Neanderthal populations are found in sites across southern Europe, the last dated to around 39,000 years ago in caves in Gibraltar and Iberia. These late Neanderthals were living in small, isolated groups, and archaeological evidence suggests populations were fragmentary and possibly in decline before sapiens arrived in large numbers. Why Neanderthals disappeared has been debated for over a century. The answer is almost certainly not a single factor, but a combination. Climate change was one pressure. The period between 50,000 to 40,000 years ago was marked by significant climatic instability with rapid fluctuations that would have disrupted ecosystems. Neanderthals, specialized for cold glacial environments, may have struggled with warming periods that shifted herbivore distributions and altered plant food and water availability. Competition with sapiens was another factor. Sapiens entering Europe brought more diverse toolkits, more sophisticated hunting strategies, and possibly larger, more complex social networks, allowing them to coordinate over greater distances. If sapiens was more effective at hunting the same prey, or better at exploiting seasonal resources and storing food, they would have had a competitive edge, gradually eroding Neanderthal populations without direct conflict. There's no clear evidence of warfare or mass killings, suggesting replacement wasn't violent displacement, but slower demographic attrition. Disease may have played a role, though this is speculative, because diseases leave no direct fossil traces. When populations isolated for hundreds of thousands of years come into contact, pathogen exchange can be devastating. If sapiens carried diseases to which Neanderthals had no immunity, even sporadic contact could have triggered epidemics. The fact they interbred suggests they were in close enough contact for disease transmission. The final factor, perhaps most important, was absorption. Genetic data shows Neanderthals didn't simply vanish, they were integrated into expanding sapiens populations through interbreeding. As Neanderthal populations shrank and became more fragmented, encounters with sapiens increasingly resulted in interbreeding. Over time, small, isolated Neanderthal groups would have been genetically swamped by the much larger sapiens population. This genetic assimilation doesn't require violence, just numbers. Denisovan disappearance follows a similar timeline, though details are harder to trace. The youngest remains date to around 40,000 years ago. Like Neanderthals, Denisovans interbred with sapiens, and their genes survive in modern populations, particularly in Melanesia and Tibet, where adaptive advantages were strong enough that genes were actively selected for. Homo floresiensis, isolated on Flores, may have survived longer. The youngest fossils are around 60,000 years old, but stone tools resembling those made by floresiensis have been found in layers dated to 50,000 years ago. Whether extinction was caused by sapiens' arrival, volcanic eruptions, climate change, or some combination remains unknown. Homo naledi presents another mystery. The youngest fossils are dated to around 236,000 years ago, but lack of more recent fossils doesn't necessarily mean extinction at that time. The fossil record is notoriously incomplete. What's clear is that the period between 50,000 to 30,000 years ago was a critical turning point, when diversity that had characterized genus Homo for 2 million years collapsed down to a single species. The common thread was sapiens expansion. Whether through competition, disease, climate change, or absorption, every other human species that encountered sapiens eventually disappeared, leaving only traces in fossils and DNA fragments surviving in genomes today. The Great Vanishing wasn't a sudden event, but a gradual process unfolding over tens of thousands of years. By the time it was over, the world looked fundamentally different. For the first time since genus Homo emerged, there was only one kind of human left. The question of why Homo sapiens survived when every other human species went extinct is one of the most fundamental puzzles in human evolution, and also one of the most difficult to answer. On the surface, there's nothing obviously superior about sapiens. Our brains, averaging 1,400 cubic centimeters, weren't the largest. Neanderthals had brains averaging 100 cubic centimeters larger. We weren't the strongest. Neanderthals were more robustly built. We weren't the most cold adapted. Again, Neanderthals. What sapiens did have was a combination of traits creating cognitive and behavioral flexibility that other species lacked. The first was language, a form more complex, more recursive, more capable of conveying abstract ideas than whatever Neanderthals or Denisovans possessed. Evidence is indirect because language doesn't fossilize, but it's supported by anatomical features, and the archaeological record showing sapiens was producing art, jewelry, and symbolic objects far earlier and in far greater variety than any other species. Language would have allowed sapiens groups to coordinate over larger areas, share information more efficiently, and transmit cultural knowledge with greater fidelity. Social organization was another key factor. While Neanderthals lived in small groups of perhaps 30 to 50 individuals with relatively localized networks, sapiens developed larger, more interconnected social structures, allowing trade, alliance building, and mate exchange across considerable distances. Evidence for long-distance trade appears as early as 100,000 years ago. Tools made from materials sourced hundreds of kilometers away, shells and ornamental objects that traveled long distances. These networks would have provided access to wider resources, greater genetic diversity through distant intermarriage, and ability to call on allies in times of scarcity. Innovation and adaptability were also critical. Sapiens populations showed remarkable capacity for developing new technologies and strategies in response to changing conditions. When large game became scarce, they switched to fishing, shellfish gathering, hunting smaller prey. When suitable stone was unavailable, they used bone, antler, wood. When climate shifted and traditional food sources disappeared, they moved to new territories and adapted. This behavioral flexibility contrasts with Neanderthal tool traditions that remained largely unchanged for tens of thousands of years, and specialized adaptations of species like floresiensis that thrived in one specific environment but couldn't adjust when it changed. There's also the possibility sapiens had an advantage in population size and reproductive rate. Larger populations are more resilient because they can absorb losses and maintain viable breeding populations. If sapiens groups were larger and reproduced more quickly, then even if individual sapiens weren't necessarily smarter or more capable than individual Neanderthals, sheer weight of numbers would eventually tip the balance. This is especially true where interbreeding was occurring, because genes of the smaller population would be diluted and absorbed. What sapiens was not, despite popular narratives, was a species that succeeded through violence or deliberate genocide. There's no archaeological evidence of mass killings, no sites where Neanderthal bones show signs of systematic violence, no indication extinction resulted from warfare. The replacement was almost certainly more subtle and gradual, playing out over thousands of years through competition for resources, demographic swamping through interbreeding, and slow erosion of already small and fragmented populations. By around 30,000 years ago, sapiens was the last human species standing, and the planet entered a phase with no precedent. A world with only one kind of human. This wasn't a triumph because evolution doesn't reward virtue. It was simply an outcome, the result of complex interplay of genetics, behavior, environment, and chance. Sapiens survived not because we were destined to, not because we were inherently superior, but because we happened to have the right combination of traits at the right time to navigate late Pleistocene challenges without going extinct. The cost of this survival was dramatic loss of diversity. When erectus, Neanderthals, Denisovans, floresiensis, naledi, and ghost populations disappeared, humanity lost an enormous range of physical forms, cognitive styles, cultural traditions, and adaptive strategies. Genus Homo, which had once included species ranging from 1 meter tall to nearly 2 meters, from brains of 400 cubic centimeters to 1,500 cubic centimeters, from tropical islands to Arctic tundra, was now reduced to a single species with relatively narrow variation. Genetic diversity within sapiens is remarkably low compared to other large mammals. a consequence of population bottlenecks and the fact all living humans are descended from a relatively small founding population that left Africa between 70,000 to 50,000 years ago. This lack of diversity has implications extending into the present. Low genetic diversity makes a species more vulnerable to diseases, environmental changes, and other threats because there's less raw material for natural selection when conditions change. The fact all non-African humans carry Neanderthal and Denisovan DNA is a small counterbalance, adding variation that might not otherwise exist. But it's not enough to make up for the loss of the entire spectrum of diversity that existed 300,000 years ago. The other cost of being sole survivors is a kind of existential loneliness. For almost 2 million years, genus Homo was never alone. There were always other kinds of humans somewhere, living their own lives, adapting to their own environments, experimenting with their own solutions to survival problems. The presence of these other species meant humanity was plural, that there were multiple ways of being human, and that evolution's path hadn't yet narrowed to a single outcome. Now, for the first time in genus history, there's only one answer to the question, what does it mean to be human? And that answer is us. We are sole inheritors of a lineage that once held far more possibilities, and whether we use that inheritance wisely or squander it remains to be seen. The night is dark, and the stars are the same stars the Neanderthals looked up at, the same stars that guided Homo erectus across continents, the same stars Homo naledi might have glimpsed through cave openings. The Earth continues its slow rotation, indifferent to the species walking its surface. Mountains rise and erode, rivers carve new paths, forests grow and burn and grow again. And through it all, life's story continues, with or without us. The 9 species that walked the Earth 300,000 years ago are gone now, most of them, their bones scattered in caves and riverbanks and sediment layers that will someday be exposed. But they were here. They lived. They struggled and survived and loved and died, and for a brief moment in geological time, the world was theirs as much as anyone's. They were not failures. They were experiments, variations on a theme, different answers to the same question. What does it mean to be human? And you, listening to this now, are the inheritor of their legacy. In your cells, in your genes, in the shape of your immune system and the color of your skin and the way your body processes oxygen, you carry fragments of their existence. You are not purely Homo sapiens. You are a mosaic, a living archive of the human family tree, carrying within you echoes of species that disappeared before history began. The world is quieter now than it was 300,000 years ago, quieter and in some ways lonelier. There's no one left to talk to who isn't fundamentally like us, no other kind of human to meet on a distant shore or in a mountain pass, no chance encounter with someone who looks different, thinks different, sees the world through eyes shaped by a different evolutionary history. We are alone, the last branch on a tree that was once thick with possibilities. Rest. The story is told. The stars remain. The earth endures. And in the morning, if there is a morning, the world will still be here, waiting to see what we will do with the inheritance we have been given.